Rock music in the 1960s didn't just entertain, it challenged authority. It questioned politics, confronted morality, and pushed boundaries the older generation wasn't ready to face. So radio stations, governments, even record labels stepped in and said one word: no. But those bands didn't weaken these songs. They made them louder, more dangerous, more unforgettable. These are 10 banned songs from the 60s, tracks that dared to speak truth, break rules, and change music forever. Number 10. Louie, Louie, The Kingsmen, 1963. To younger listeners, Louie, Louie might sound like a sloppy lo-fi party tune, barely understandable, full of chaos and garage rock charm. But to the people who lived through the early 60s, this song was treated like a national threat. Right after the song hit radio, parents and politicians panicked. They claimed the slurred vocals hid secret obscene messages. Rumors spread that teenagers were memorizing filthy lyrics, even though the actual song was harmless. The FBI launched a full investigation, spending 31 months trying to decode what they thought was criminally explicit content. When the report finally came back, the conclusion was almost embarrassing. The lyrics are unintelligible, but the damage was done. Radio bans turned the song into forbidden fruit, and teenagers loved it more than ever. Every time someone tried to shut it up, it got louder in the youth culture. For 60s kids, Louie, Louie wasn't just a rock anthem. It was a rebellion you could dance to. Number 9. God Only Knows, The Beach Boys, 1966. To modern listeners, God Only Knows is one of the most beautiful love songs ever written. But in 1966, beauty wasn't the problem. The title was. At the time, many radio stations were terrified of anything that referenced religion casually, especially in a pop song. Using the word God in the title was considered offensive, even blasphemous. Some broadcasters refused to air it, claiming it would corrupt young minds or disrespect faith. In the Bible Belt, the ban was absolute. Teenagers growing up in the era remember how strange it felt, that a song so sincere and heartfelt was treated like something dangerous, and that fear only heightened its mystique. The song sounded unlike anything else: French horns, delicate harmonies, an emotion that felt deeper, more mature than the surf pop people expected from the Beach Boys. Brian Wilson poured his soul into it, making a love song that wasn't cute or simple, but spiritual. Paul McCartney would later call it the greatest song ever written. But in the 60s, the establishment didn't hear genius. They heard a threat. To those who lived through the controversy, God Only Knows became more than a hit. It became proof that music could be sacred without being a hymn, and that even the softest songs can shake the system. Number 8. Eve of Destruction, Barry McGuire, 1965.
The Eastern world, it is exploding.
To younger ears today, Eve of Destruction might sound like just another protest song from the 60s. But for those living during that decade, it felt like an alarm bell, loud, direct, and terrifyingly real. Barry McGuire didn't sugarcoat anything. He sang about Vietnam, racial injustice, the nuclear threat, all the things teenagers were seeing on TV but adults refused to talk about. Instead of vague peace and love, this song pointed fingers. It exposed hypocrisy. It dared to say that the world was closer to collapse than anyone wanted to admit. Politicians were furious. Teachers told students it was unpatriotic. Radio stations banned it across the country, especially on military bases, yet banning it only made the song an anthem. Kids passed it around like a secret truth they weren't supposed to know. Some remember hearing it in dark bedrooms late at night, volume low, afraid someone might walk in. Not because the song was explicit, but because it was honest. The line, "You're old enough to kill, but not for votin'," hit the hardest. It called out the unfairness that 18-year-olds could die for their country, but couldn't vote for their leaders. For the generation who lived through that fear and uncertainty. Eve of Destruction wasn't just banned, it was validated. Number 7, Let's Spend the Night Together. The Rolling Stones, 1967. Today, Let's Spend the Night Together sounds playful, a flirty rock song driven by swagger and unforgettable piano chords. But when it dropped in 1967, that title was enough to send TV executives and radio stations into panic mode. The 60s may have looked wild in hindsight, but America was still deeply conservative. Songs about romance were fine, as long as everyone pretended sex didn't exist. Mick Jagger blew that door wide open with just 6 words. Let's spend the night together. To parents and politicians, that was a full-scale moral assault. Stations banned it. Newspapers condemned it. The BBC refused to play it entirely. And when the Rolling Stones performed it live on The Ed Sullivan Show, the network forced them to change the lyric to, "Let's spend some time together." Jagger rolled his eyes dramatically while singing it, a quiet middle finger broadcast to millions. For teenagers living in that era, this wasn't just a song, it was a cultural turning point. The Rolling Stones weren't hinting, winking, or hiding behind metaphors. They were saying out loud what young people were already thinking and doing. To 60s kids, "Let's Spend the Night Together" wasn't banned because it was dirty, it was banned because it was honest. Number 6, A Day in the Life. The Beatles, 1967. To modern fans, A Day in the Life is praised as one of the Beatles' greatest artistic achievements. Experimental, dreamlike, and hauntingly poetic. But in 1967, not everyone saw genius. Some only saw danger. The BBC banned the song almost immediately after release. Why? One lyric, "I'd love to turn you on." Censors feared it was an open reference to drug use, an invitation even. And John Lennon's surreal imagery only fueled the paranoia. Mentions of death, accidents, and unsettling dream logic made authorities uneasy. The climactic orchestral chaos was even considered capable of influencing unstable minds. For teenagers who lived in that era, the band turned the song into a legend overnight. Friends gathered around record players, turning the volume down low as if they were listening to contraband. The final piano chord, long, deep, and echoing forever, felt like a door closing on the innocence of early pop. Parents didn't like that the Beatles had grown up. Teenagers knew the world had changed, right? And this song sounded like that change. It was the moment when rock music stopped being entertainment and started becoming art. To those who were there, A Day in the Life wasn't banned because it was harmful. It was banned because it was honest, bold, and smarter than the people trying to silence it. Number 5, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. The Beatles, 1967. Today, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds is celebrated as one of the most imaginative and iconic tracks from Sgt. Pepper. But in 1967, some people didn't hear imagination. They saw initials, LSD. That was enough for UK and US radio censors to slam the brakes. Authorities were convinced the Beatles were secretly promoting psychedelic drugs to millions of teenagers. Lennon denied it over and over, saying the inspiration came from a drawing his young son Julian made of a classmate named Lucy. But once the rumor caught fire, there was no stopping it. The visuals didn't help. Tangerine trees, marmalade skies, and newspaper taxis screaming surrealism. To worried parents, this wasn't harmless creativity. It was a psychedelic instruction manual. But for 60s kids, that was the magic. The world felt big, rules felt small, and music like this cracked reality open. Fans remember staring at the record sleeve, listening through headphones, convinced they were hearing something forbidden and important. It was more than a song. It was a secret escape route into imagination. To those who grew up in that moment, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds wasn't banned because of what it said. It was banned because it dared to sound like a new universe, one the older generation couldn't control. Number 4, My Generation. The Who, 1965. To younger listeners, My Generation is just a cool mod rock anthem with a catchy bass line. But for those who grew up in the mid-60s, this song sounded like a revolution with teeth. Roger Daltrey didn't sing the lyrics. He spit them out with fury. And that one line, "Why don't you all fade away?" Older generations knew exactly what that stutter was hiding. A near explicit, Why don't you all just go away and die? To the establishment, that was an attack. Radio stations banned it. Newspapers called it dangerous. Some stores refused to carry the single. Why? Because this song wasn't about peace and love, and it was about frustration, anger, youth refusing to apologize for existing. The Who weren't asking permission to be themselves. They were done pretending to respect the status quo. Teenagers of the era vividly remember blasting it from scooters and bedroom speakers, finally hearing someone say what they had always felt. It wasn't polished, it wasn't polite, it was real. And when Daltrey snarled, "I hope I die before I get old," it terrified adults and electrified the young. To those who lived through that firestorm, my generation wasn't banned for rebellion, it was rebellion. Number 3, Brown-Eyed Girl, Van Morrison, 1967. To modern audiences, Brown-Eyed Girl is a warm, nostalgic classic, the soundtrack to summer barbecues and old love stories. But in 1967, multiple radio networks banned it because they believed it crossed a very clear line. Teen romance was fine. Teen sexuality was not. The lyric that caused the biggest uproar? Making love in the green grass. For many parents and broadcasters, that single line was all they needed to declare the song immoral. Some stations censored the line completely, replacing it with a softer studio version. Others banned the track outright, worried it would lead young people into sinful behavior. But for teenagers who lived through the decade, this ban only made the song more irresistible. Brown-Eyed Girl felt real, not the sanitized version of love adults pretended teenagers had. It reminded them of stolen kisses, summer nights, and growing up faster than the world wanted them to. The upbeat melody disguised a truth adults couldn't handle. The youth of the 60s weren't children anymore. To those who experienced it, Brown-Eyed Girl wasn't scandalous. It was honest, and that's exactly why the establishment tried to silence it. Number 2, Whole Lotta Love, Led Zeppelin, 1969. To today's fans, Whole Lotta Love is one of the most iconic rock tracks ever recorded, a blast of power, swagger, and guitar wizardry. But in 1969, radio stations weren't hearing innovation. They were hearing seduction. The controversy centered on Robert Plant's vocals during the song's extended middle section. His moans and screams, echoing through psychedelic effects, shocked censors. Some DJs said it sounded like a live broadcast of a bedroom, and entire broadcast networks banned it to protect morality. That ban only fueled fascination. Teenagers who lived through the era remember the thrill of hearing this song on vinyl rather than radio, often with the volume turned down so parents wouldn't storm into the room. It wasn't just the sensuality that frightened adults. It was the freedom, the unapologetic embrace of pleasure, the message that desire wasn't sinful, it was human. Meanwhile, Jimmy Page's guitar riff, one of the greatest in rock history, made every young listener feel invincible. It was primal, it was daring, it was loud in all the ways society told them not to be. To 60s kids, the band didn't stop Whole Lotta Love. It gave it power, turning it into a forbidden rock ritual, pulsing with electricity and rebellion. Number 1, Light My Fire, The Doors, 1967. To younger generations, Light My Fire is just a psychedelic rock classic, smooth, hypnotic, and forever tied to Jim Morrison's mystique. But for those who lived through the late 60s, this song wasn't simply a hit, it was a cultural emergency. When the Doors were invited to perform on The Ed Sullivan Show, the biggest television platform in America, the network gave them a demand. Don't sing the line, girl, we couldn't get much higher. It sounded like a drug reference. Jim Morrison agreed backstage, but when the cameras turned on, he sang the line louder than ever. Sullivan was furious. He banned the Doors from the show for life. Teenagers, meanwhile, worshipped them even more. Radio stations across the country pulled the song from rotation, terrified of promoting drug culture. But bands only made it bigger. Young listeners remember late-night FM stations spinning the uncut version, the extended solos twisting like smoke, and Morrison's voice dragging them deeper into a new mood. Darker, freer, alive. To adults, this song represented everything wrong with youth. To the youth, it represented everything adults were afraid of. For 60s kids, Light My Fire wasn't banned because it crossed a line. It got banned because it refused to pretend the line existed.